Hello everyone, it's Ross again. I'm back with another hobby desk. So what I want to do today is Hoth style terrain. So what I mean by this is, I'm saying Hoth because I'm playing Star Wars Legion a lot. I wanted snowy style terrain, some line of sight blocking pieces and some rough terrain. So today will be a line of sight blocking piece, and what do you get on an icy planet such as Hoth from the Star Wars universe? You can get cliffs and things like that, white cliffs, snowy cliffs. Yeah, that looks fine, that's great. But I want something a bit different, a bit more of a centerpiece. So I'm thinking large crystals, large shards of ice. So that's what I'm going to attempt in this video. As per usual, it's going to be from household materials, so next to nothing. So I've got some MDF. You can use some incredibly thick cardboard. Just cut it to a basic shape. But MDF, pretty hard stuff. Less likely to warp than card. Not saying it won't warp. And there's a few tips and tricks to stop anything from warping really. Once you use PVA glue, if I use it at the top, it would shrink up, crisp up around the edges and warp the base. So you could always spray it first, so it's less likely to do that, possibly, or glue both sides, less likely to do that. Use tape on the back, so it's harder for it to curl around. You know, you could always put a batten across or something, it's less likely to curl. There's a few tips and tricks, but I'm hoping with a thicker MDF and not much PVA glue, that this shouldn't warp very much. The next thing is good old polystyrene. Basic polystyrene, just from packaging. I have dustbin bags full of this stuff in the attic. Yeah, I'm a bit of a hoarder. You will be a hoarder too. Join us. You know, if you want to do hobby stuff, you're going to have jam jars of sand, tiny pebbles, cork, empty film containers. That's right, film, if you remember using film in cameras. MDF, polystyrene, bits of random plastic. You know, right next to me, as an example, I have literally busted bits of plastic from stuff. I'm thinking that would be ideal for pieces of industrial terrain. You know, you'll collect far too much. And as you know, I've got a bit of a thing for stir sticks. I make a lot of things out of stir sticks. Crates, or weapons containers, portaloos, you name it. I've done loads. So these are the basic materials. What I will say is, in this video, I am using a hot wire cutter. Now, a hot wire cutter, you can get a cheap one off of eBay, for example, like this. So I think this was £6, including the battery. So it's really cheap, really basic. But obviously, the more money you normally spend on stuff, the better it is. Now, you don't have to use a hot wire cutter to cut polystyrene. You don't. But it will tear unless it's an incredibly sharp knife, and the little balls will go everywhere. It won't be so smooth. Plus, it's quite a static material. It's quite staticky. It will stick to the blade. It'll make a hell of a mess. Whereas this stuff here, I will demonstrate, will cut through really easy. So hopefully it's the same thickness. Look how easy this is cutting. So I'm just squeezing the trigger. It heats the wire. I'm not forcing it, I'm doing it fairly nice and gently. There's minimal smell to it, so you know you will die of the fumes that come off polystyrene, because it isn't nice stuff, you know, it's chemically made. And even though I did that freehand, I didn't use any lines or anything like that, that is relatively smooth and not likely to tear or snatch as we go. So I will explain what I'm going to do in this video in stages, and then I'll show you in stages. Okay. So my idea for this piece, like I said, is shards of ice. Now I'm going to make it quite sci-fi, quite cartoony. In other words, I've never seen shards of ice sticking out the ground like this. So imagine that, an incredibly large icicle shape staggered, staggered, staggered. That's the plan. So I am going to taper these and make them look like giant shards of ice. Now, you know, that could be found in nature. I haven't personally seen them, but I want to make it look a bit different. And I'm not just going to paint it white because I don't think it would stand out very much. So when I say cartoony, I'm going to make these ice crystals look quite blue. You know, I know ice isn't really like that, but I want it to stand out a bit. If it's just a plain like white piece of terrain like that, it's not really going to stand out. So I'm going to do it a few crazy little colours and see what it looks like. I mean, it won't cost me anything. I've already got the materials, so liking this stuff, you know, good experiment, have some fun. But this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to cut out pieces like this and different sizes and shapes and stick them all facing the one direction, so it looks like the cold air has blasted this to make a nice sculpture even. Right, okay, I'll start chopping out some pieces and get back to you as I'm shaping them. Okay, so I've cut out a few pieces of various sizes, so a few little chunky ones, and what I'm hoping to do is make them look like icicles. So I'll start off at one end, tapering and tapering and tapering. So I'll get wider at one end and I am at the other. So I mean about hot wire cutter, so much easier, less mess. So it doesn't have to be perfect. You know, I'm not looking for complete symmetry and smoothness. I would imagine this is going to be carved from the winds of an ice planet. So I'll just keep shaving until I'm happy. I'll keep going and going. That's going to be too wide. I'm going to have to make it more of an arrowhead to start with, I think. And let the hot wire, if you are using a hot wire cutter, do the work. So don't pull it if there's any resistance. That's a bit more what I'm after. Something like that. I'll keep working it until it's a nice point. It's kind of therapeutic cutting this stuff actually. And keep going until you're happy with it. I'll come back to you in a minute once I've finished carving this one. Okay, so this is the basic guideline of what I want. Something like that. And as you notice, it's kind of that angle when it sits because I have cut the bottom at an angle. So that's what I envisage. So one like that, for example, and then one stick up there, one a bit more upright. That's what I want. And then I was going to put a load of rocks and things around it. So you could use this polystyrene like this, and you see there's a few little like gaps and bumps and whatnot. So you can see like in there, it's a little gap. And if you paint it with sand and PVA like I do most of my rocky outcrops, it won't look like ice. It won't be smooth enough. So what I'm going to do is use some filler, just simple wood filler, smear over the whole damn thing. Keeping it a bit moist so it gets in all the little nooks and cracks. And when it dries, I'm going to lightly sand it. so it's fairly smooth and gets rid of all the bits. And in doing that, it should be harder as well, so it's less likely to chip. And then I'll cover it in PVA glue once it's all dry. So you could use other types of foam. So you could use like the building foam, like the yellow core foam that you use quite a lot of the time in the UK. And that stuff is great for sanding, brilliant for sanding. You won't find it in your packing material because you will have to buy it unless you know a builder or someone like that who's chucking it away. That's great. I mean, it will cost you a little bit. If you want to spend a bit of money on it, that's fine. It's not expensive, i.e. it's not like buying a brand new piece of scenery. And it is really nice to work with. You know, it's really, you know, you can sculpt it with knives, you can sand it, you can pretty much turn it into anything you want. It's great, but it will chip. It will chip quite easy, so you have to put several coats of PVA glue on it. Now, you can get the yellow, which is the softest, or you can get the pink, which is slightly less likely to chip, or you can get the blue. Now, this stuff is slightly more expensive and slightly harder to come by in this country. I mean, we don't use the pink or the blue, but you can buy it places online, and it's just as easy to work with, and it's less likely to chip. So if you can get hold of like the blue building foam, go for it. Yeah, so why not? You spend a bit more on it. When I say a bit more, the yellow stuff in comparison, most builders will use it in the UK. Like I said, they'll chuck it in the skips and whatever. Just ask them and they'll give you a piece. For the size of the stuff that we're using, you don't really want to buy a big sheet like it comes in. It comes in several meters sheets, so it's going to last a hobbyist a long time. And they're not that expensive, you know. It's what, 10 quid for a sheet, something like that. It's nearly twice as expensive for the blue stuff for the same size. So I'll put up a little picture to show you what I'm talking about. Ding! There you go. But yeah, this stuff is pretty much free. You get in any packaging. Just spend a bit of time with a bit of filler, sand in the back, not a problem. Whereas the blue stuff or the yellow stuff, sanding the back is not a big deal. But like I said, it is a blimmer to chip. So I'll just grab you a piece now what I made a few years ago. So I made a piece from the yellow foam, and I sculpted, this is a long time ago, so forgive me people, covered in dust. So like a little Celtic knot in a door there. This is all from one piece of the yellow foam, so that's just a rough bit of foam, a chunk, and I sculpted it, and it's amazing to sculpt. You know, you can flick a bit out with a knife to make it look like a rock edge. All this, what I did was use a toothpick and work it back. It's amazing stuff to work with, rickety steps. It's all made from one piece, so you don't have to slot anything together. It's fantastic, but it is very soft, as you can see. So you need several coats of PVA glue. So I'm more likely to go with this polystyrene than this, not necessarily out of cost. It's because this will break so easy if it's a splinter. Or polystyrene may snap, but hopefully with enough coats of PVA glue it won't. So this stuff is quite brittle. So using it on a table to make your own battle boards, brilliant. Using it for this stuff, it is quite likely to break. Plus, this is cheaper, and I'm doing a video on cheap household terrain. So I will do several more of these ice shards. Now I stopped waffling about polystyrenes, and I'll come back to you when I've cut them all out. Okay, so all I've used is simple wood filler. So I've just done a slightly watered down coat with a brush, I mean, you could use things like body shop filler. Basically what we're doing is making the polystyrene nice and smooth. So once it's gone off, I'll use some light sandpaper to smooth it out, and it also makes it a bit more resilient. So what I will do after I paint it is cover it in PVA glue anyway, to give it a little bit of a sheen, plus it also makes it hard. So it's reasonably solid, don't want to push my luck, but that's how I see it at the moment. Fairly smooth, not too bad. I can see a little bit of an area where I was holding it and I haven't got sand or filler on the base of it, and that's fine because I will be sticking it to the base, covering it with rocks and snow and stuff anyway. As long as the main piece is relatively smooth, I'm happy, because these are supposed to look like ice shards. So what I will do is get some cheap acrylic paint. There's no point in using your decent miniature paints, and paint the whole of these shards, and then I'll airbrush a little bit of the blue on there and things like that, give it a bit of detail so it doesn't look just white. So I'll do that now, and I might even mix a little bit of PVA glue in there as well, make it slightly harder. Okay, so I'm using the board itself as a mixing palette because why not, but you can use a plate or whatever you like. So fairly large brush. I'm not using a hobby brush because I don't want to kill it. So I have a couple of these put to one side for terrain making. And that's all there is to it. Maybe a couple coats of this on it. But it's the acrylic paint, poster paint you can get relatively cheap. Most hobby supply stores or home bargains, Poundland, things like that. And just try to put it on as smooth as you can. Of course, if you did it with an airbrush, it would be incredibly smooth. But then you're using airbrush paints on terrain. That could get costly, but it gives better results. So rinse and repeat on all of these so they're nicely even coated, and possibly even 2 coats, depends on the coverage. Okay, so after I painted the ice shards white, I've used the airbrush and mixed up a very light blue and started from the tip back down, getting darker and heavier with the blue as I go. I've done this on all of the flat edges on the ice shards, ignoring the flat faces, ignoring the edges, if that makes sense. So as you can see, it gives that kind of effect. And then started getting darker and darker blues near the base. So once all 3 are dry, 3 in my case, but obviously you can do more, I've stuck them to the base. So as the base is drying, I've put PVA glue around, I've put chunks of cork around the actual base itself, and I've drizzled it in PVA for the first lot of sand. Now make sure you have a board down, or some newspaper or something you can scoop off the remaining sand. And I do have different gradients of sands. I do sieve sands. Yes, I sieve sands. You know, I must stand up and confess this to the world. I sieve sands. It's a habit, you know. Everybody has one. You know, I admit it. I sieve sands. But in this case, I've just got a random sand mix with different sizes. Rough as possible in this particular case, because I don't want them all the same. So this is the first lot of sand I'm putting on after the cork bits. So I use cork. You can use actual stone if you want, I'm trying to keep the weight down. I know you don't think there's going to be much weight on something this size with some stone, but just shake off some excess. And obviously what doesn't stick when it's dry I will knock off and use again. So like I said, it's the first coating of sand because I guarantee I'll miss a bit, or I want to add another little bit. There's a gap or something between the ice sculptures. Get a little bit in there. So I'm going to let that dry as long as possible, so probably somewhere like 24 hours. Knock off all the sand, cover it in PVA Glen, whatever, and add any more bits as necessary. So already, straight away, I can see that I probably will add some bits, like at the back of this ice piece there. So far, so good. Right, I'll come back after 24 hours, but for you, it will feel but a moment. Okay, so once you put enough sand down, or whatever the base material you want to use, you want to paint it before you put the flock on, just in case anything shines through, because obviously this is a sandy colour, being sand, funny that. And if the flock ever comes off, it's going to look fairly obvious. So I'm going to just blast some blue. And I'm going to dry brush, once it's all dry, a lighter bluey white, and on the top, final dry brush white. Because I didn't want the snow terrain to be white. It would look a bit too fake. Even though, you know, the harsh tundra, it would be all white. I want the tabletop to be a bit more interesting. So we're going to exaggerate it, because if you see ice like this in real life, it wouldn't be this blue, I know. But we want it to be a bit exciting, don't we? So I will paint the whole thing. Probably cover my hands in the process. So that'll be a lesson to you. Wear gloves. Right. I'll hit the next when it's drying. Okay, so with the white dry brush, it's starting to look pretty good. It looks a bit crazy, looks a bit cartoony, because snow isn't normally that blue. So you can dry brush it again, to calm it down a bit, and then apply some flock, or you can apply some flock now. So if you want to apply flock in this much bulk, looking at this stuff, you'll see that it is quite light, quite fluffy. If that's what you want, great. But what I was planning to do was, with an empty container to one side, decanter some of this into there and mix it with some PVA glue. So I will mix it and make a nice goop, and I'll start applying it to the base. Okay, so it's very important you use clean water when you do this. So I'm using about 50-50 PVA glue and water at the moment. Also make sure you got a clean brush, because any impurities in the brush, any dirt, any paint. I've done it before in the past and I've had red snow, which is not a bad thing if you're painting the Corn Army, I suppose. But this is the kind of consistency you want to go with. Something like that. And then you kind of want to use a spatula or something to scoop it on. So I'm going to try it with a paintbrush. So I'm just using, like I said, clean water. Always keep clean water handy to one side, especially using an airbrush. And I'm going to decant some of this onto there. Squidge, 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 squidge. Obviously it doesn't work unless you make the noises. Put plenty on and just work it around. If you want fluffy snow, that's fine. But I find with fluffy snow, it doesn't seem to stay around very long. With this stuff, hopefully, the PVA glue should harden it up. And it should be a bit more resilient. So it's fine for home use, but if you're like me and you take to a club every week, yeah, you want to see it last a bit, really. So just like that, really. Maybe not complete coverage. A little bit shown through. Something like that. Now I'll keep applying it, and I'll come back when it's all dry after 24 hours, and then we'll see what it looks like. So this is the final piece. I've dry brushed the snow a little bit as well, but I think next time, to make the snow possibly a bit whiter, I might drop some white into the flock mix. I don't know, I'm fairly happy with it. I mean, like I said, it's a bit cartoony, you don't really get ice that colour, but I wanted some snow terrain in the middle of the board. I wanted it to be eye-catching, not just blobs of white. So yeah, I'm reasonably happy with it. And it's really simple and easy to make. So just chunks of polystyrene or foam core, whatever you want to use. People call it different things. So it's a polystyrene of a kind. It's household packing polystyrene. But yeah, you can use insulation foam, things like that. But there's plenty around. Doesn't cost much money. And yeah, a little bit of flock, a little bit of patience. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Please hit the like button and please subscribe. Catch you next time.